Hey everyone, it's Sean Gibbons from the Communications Network. Lovely to see you all. Chances are you're here because you want to talk a little bit about the no-code revolution that's going on in web development, and we're going to get to that in just a quick minute. But right now, I want to make space for everybody to come into the Zoom room here. And the first thing we're going to do is just follow a habit we've had now for a while, which is this two-word check-in. This is something that we borrow from Professor Brene Brown down at the University of Houston. And the idea is just, if you'll go ahead and toss into the chat, make sure you're talking to everyone, or it might say all panelists and attendees in your chat. Go ahead, type your name in, where you're coming in from, right? And then in just 2 words, how you doing right now? And so I'll model this for everybody, and then we can, everybody's starting to get there already. Hey, Robin, how are you? In DC, happy and curious. Kenneth, how are you? All right, everybody, go ahead and toss them in. Let's see who's with us. Shelby in Wilmington, doing great. Happy to hear that, Shelby. Who else might be with us? Jessica in Michigan, Phil, let's see, Margaret, Tori, Miranda, Josh, Michelle, Kate, Chris, Hiram, Jaime, Tamara, nice to see you, my friend. Kristen, Glenn, lots of folks. Okay, going a little fast. For me, suffice to say, hey, Andy, go ahead and say hello. If you see folks you know you can DM them, chat with one another. We're going to be tossing stuff into the chat while we're underway. So if you're looking for resources, and Sam's been kind enough to put some resources together, so not to worry. If you miss something, we'll make sure to get it to you a little bit later on. All right, so with that, my colleague Carrie Klein is helping us with the slides and stuff in the chat. Kareem, would you go ahead and take us forward, and we'll toss a few things in here for you all. One thing to just flag for everybody, and this is as much a note of gratitude as anything, I think there's over 1,300 of us now who are in this network Slack that we launched back on January 18th. So about 6 weeks in, what we've seen is thousands of messages coming across with folks asking questions, looking for answers, seeking resources, and folks very, very kindly showing up for one another. This is something you got to be a network member to avail yourself of Slack, but we're really proud and really thrilled with what's happened so far. And future ahead, we just think this has the opportunity to be transformational for folks in our field. Many of us are working in small shops. We're required to sort of think we know all the answers, and yet, of course, you can't, right? But you come with a posse. There's 1,300 of us on the other side of this who are happy and want to see you succeed, can help you with answers when we can. So certainly encourage you to check this out. All right, if we could go ahead. Hey, Edith, how are you? Other thing is, we are looking for your help around the conference. So believe it or not, if you were to go on the ComNet 23 site, which we just updated today, you'd see we have 195 days before we're all come together down in Atlanta towards the end of September. Right now, what we're looking for is folks to share ideas for proposals, specifically case studies. What have you learned? What have you been working on that you want to share with the rest of the community that we can all learn from? We're very excited for that. You can see Carrie just put something into the chat. We will have this open until the end of this month, so March 31st is our deadline for proposals, but very, very excited to have everybody with us. And right now we're looking for your help to help build out that program. All right, with that, let's move ahead. Next thing to talk about is the other thing that we're seeking is, we just opened, this was yesterday, the call for nominations for the Clarence B. Jones Impact Award. The word emphasized there is impact. What we're trying to do, and have been doing now for the last few years, is lifting up examples of foundation and nonprofit communications efforts that have had transformational change. So in other words, something big happened as a consequence. Folks we've recognized in the past have been places like the Innocence Project just last year in Seattle, the Truth Initiative, which works on curbing teen smoking, United We Dream. There's some wonderful case studies that you can avail yourselves of on jonesaward.org. And we're hoping to add to that collection by naming a new winner this year. We will name a new winner this year, but right now we're looking for nominations. And so more on that at jonesaward.org. If you would, we'd be very, very grateful if y'all would help us out and name or nominate some folks you think are worthy of the recognition. All right, with that, let's move on. The deadline there, I think, is mid-May. So we have a little bit of time between here and there. Briefly, we'll put this in the chat so you can learn a little bit more about it. The network launched something we're calling circles. The idea being the network's gotten pretty big over the last few years. And in order to find folks who might be most helpful and useful to you, we want to organize ourselves in slightly smaller groups. We just know that's kind of how community works. It's hard to manage relationships with 1,000+ people, but that trusted group of 10 or 12 people who are working on the same things you're working on, or maybe hold the same role or share an identity, that's what circles is all about. You can check it out through the link that we just shared. So I encourage you to do so. Again, if you're a network member, this is something that's available to you. So welcome you to check it out. We've been very thrilled with the hundreds and hundreds of folks who've been participating over the last little while. All right, with that, let's move ahead. Local groups is the other thing we want to tell you about. It's been really cool since the beginning of the year and really towards the back end of last year, starting to see these groups emerge as we're starting to move towards a different phase. I guess we're out of the pandemic officially, and still some caution, but folks are starting to gather in real life. And we have one coming up, which I think might actually be virtual. Let's go ahead and click to that one. It's the LA event that's coming up on March the 30th. You can see all these lovely faces. Chances are these are folks who are familiar to you, but they're organizing something for us, or it's a virtual gathering to be happening March 30th for folks who live in the Southern California, LA area. Encourage you to check that out. Don't need to be a member for this one. If you work in comms for good, you're curious, want to make take an opportunity to meet some of your colleagues who also live in the region or in the city, this is a great way to do that. So I encourage you to check that out. I think that's it for me. Maybe one more. Let's move ahead. Here we go. So I'm about to pass it over to Sam. We're going to hear a lot about this phrase, no code. It's both a really great Pearl Jam record for the 90s. I'm dating myself a little bit, but it's also a movement that's been underway really since the advent of the web. You go all the way back to sort of the arrival of the Netscape browser, which changed the way we all experience the web as more of a graphical interface. The movement over time has been to make the web infinitely more democratic. But I'm not the expert here. Sam Crawford is. He's kind enough. He's joining us from the UK. If you hear an accent and you think, gosh, he kind of sounds like a Beatle, well, of course he does. He's from Liverpool. And so Sam's going to join us in just a quick minute. Before we go to that, just want to give a little bit of gratitude. Our friend Amber is offering ASL services. She's coming in from Southern Indiana. And so if you have need, we'll have her pinned up here so that you can watch her. You can also check out closed captioning. And then one final reminder, Sam's going to go for the better part of the hour here. On the other side of that, we'll have time for questions, and we'll put a link into the chat so everybody can join us for office hours. Sam has been kind enough to make an extra 30 minutes available to answer questions that you may have that might be coming up over the course of the next little while. All right, with that, I'm going to shut up and get out of your way. I'll see you on the other side. Sam, my friend, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for the intro, Sean. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this webinar, which is all about how the modern web development landscape has changed. And like Sean mentioned, we're going to be talking quite a lot about no code. So first of all, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone here today. It means a lot that you take, the best part of an hour out of your day to listen to me talk about web design. So with that in mind, I'm going to get straight into our agenda. So who am I and why you may want to listen to me? We're going to go through what this webinar is and what it isn't. We're going to explore why we're all here today. Then I'm going to dive into what no code is, how it's drastically affecting the web development landscape, and what all of this actually means for you. Then we've got a cost breakdown of conventional websites versus newer websites, why you no longer have to be a wizard to get involved with web development. We've got a mini case study featuring compnetwork.org, and I'm going to then outline some resources which Sean alluded to at the beginning. Then we'll do a recap, and then of course we've got a 30-minute Q&A at the end. So let's get on to who I am. My name's Sam, and I run By Crawford, which is a specialist web design agency specializing specifically in building Squarespace websites. We build Squarespace sites for organizations all over the world, one of which being the network. But don't worry, I want to make this abundantly clear. This isn't an ad specifically for Squarespace. We're going to be discussing no code as a whole in a much broader sense. There's going to be no discount codes, no personal agendas, nothing like that. But just back to me for a second. So why you might want to listen to me. First off, I've won various Best Web Designer awards, even against what you'd maybe call conventional teams. I am one of the world's leading no-code web designers, thanks to it's quite a unique approach, which I'm going to explain later. I've also launched over 300 client websites to date, and I've also been on both sides of the coin when it comes to code-intensive versus code-free. So I've seen the benefits of standard and then your not so standard builds. And I've also been building websites for quite a long time. So what you're seeing here is a screen grab of my very first website, which was built in 2008. Long story short, I built this during an IT lesson in school when the teacher was boring us about Excel spreadsheets and formulas and whatnot. So I thought, okay, a family friend was working on a Ferrari. I got to sit in it for 30 seconds. I want to make a website about this. And I guess that's where my love affair with websites began. So that's me, but enough about me. I'm going to turn the spotlight on you for just a second. So there should be a poll popping up in a moment. And my question to you is, when the phrase website rebuild comes up in a meeting, are you happy or are you horrified? Okay, so let's have a look. I'll give us, 10, 15 seconds. That is about as even a split as we're going to get. So it's good actually to see that we've got about 54% of people that are happy, and then we've got about 46% of people that are horrified. So that is quite an even split. It's quite interesting, to be fair, and it's pretty much exactly what I thought. Obviously, people's attitudes are shifting, but a lot of us are still really nervous when it comes to a new website. When it comes up, we kind of kick the can down the road. But I just want to ask you one more question off the back of that. And again, we should have a pop-up coming up again. So when was the last time that you made significant changes to your website? Was it within the past 3 years or has it been longer? Again, I'll give us 10, 15 seconds and we'll see how this one goes. Okay, tons of people voting here. Okay, it's slightly more weighted to within the last 3 years, but there's still about 40% of us who haven't made significant changes within the past 3 years. And that, to me, that's very interesting. So the purpose of that was just to glean what everyone's relationship is with websites. And there's a fair chunk of us who obviously dread that website overhaul. And I assume that's probably why we're seeing another fair chunk that have put off doing major changes within those last 3 years. But that really doesn't have to be the case. And as I'll outline in just a moment, no code allows us to halt that website-induced dread, and it opens up a world of possibility for making changes on the fly. So now I want to move on to what this webinar is and what it isn't specifically. So I need to get this really clear. There's going to be a time and a place for your 6 and 7-figure website builds, for extremely complex sites with every bell and whistle. I think this price point probably makes sense. These sorts of websites, they can take years to build, and not only that, but they do require extremely specialist knowledge, and they require entire teams to make sure everything actually works as it's supposed to. I'm absolutely not here to diminish that in any way, shape, or form. But what this webinar is, which you'll see here, is the exploration of a new way. And this is a way that simply just wasn't an option less than a decade ago. In fact, it's an option that I'd hazard to guess a lot of us on this webinar probably didn't even know existed. Or if you did know it existed, you probably didn't think that it could actually help you in any way, shape, or form, in any measurable way, really. And no code is an area that I'm extremely passionate about. My goal for this webinar as a whole is just to educate you in the hopes that it may open your eyes to possibilities. And because we're entering a new era, so I want you to get the absolute most from it. Now, I've talked a lot already about no code, so I want to get exactly into what it is, so you know precisely what I'm talking about. So this is the official definition, and it reads as: it allows programmers and non-programmers to create software and graphical interfaces and configuration instead of traditional computer programming. And I know that's a mouthful. So what this essentially means is that instead of being bogged down in matrix-like lines of code, anyone can edit visually and not have to be a programming expert anymore. And this is the driving force behind the shifting landscape that I mentioned in the title of this webinar. And these visual editors, they're all around us. In fact, did you know that Facebook, Google Slides, and Instagram actually fall under the same category of no code? I'm guessing that you probably didn't, but hopefully now you're beginning to see that this movement is a lot less niche than you may have actually thought. So, for example, taking content from one device, let's say on your phone, and publishing that to the wider web is a no-code activity by definition. And the process itself involves various functions that need to be fired at the right time, lots of code in the back end. But for us, when we do it, we're just pressing a button, and it's so easy. We don't think to categorize it. Like, it's so ingrained and easy that it's as normal to us as brushing our teeth or tying our shoes. And like I say, I hope that is sort of giving you an example of no code and making you realize that it's a lot wider spread than you may think. So why are you actually here? I've noticed tons and tons of people were getting involved on the polls in the chat with Sean, and it's great to see, so many people here. And I know there's going to be many reasons for you spending your precious time watching me. But if I had to hazard a guess, some of these reasons, there'll be some of us who, let's say, are about to embark on a rebuild and want to assess our options. Maybe you've gone as far as going to get a quote off a developer, and maybe you've thought, actually, I think that is possibly a bit too much to pay for what I want. Or maybe you've heard of this no-code revolution. Maybe you've seen people like me rabbiting on about it on LinkedIn, and you're just, a little bit more curious and you want to find out what it is. I saw a few people say they were curious, so I'm guessing that is one. Or maybe I'm completely wrong, I'm completely off the mark, and it's a completely different reason. And I know there's going to be tons more reasons, and maybe we can go through them a little bit more in the Q&A at the end. But whatever your reason, this may be the first time you've come to explore your website options in quite a while. So I know there's about 40% of us here that this is the case for. And I just want to say that the landscape as a whole has shifted massively. And like I've said, my goal is just to show you how and why it's no longer a scary wasteland that us mere mortals can no longer traverse. Websites are more accessible than ever, and there's no shame in starting at ground zero. So I now want to discuss the no-code era, what you're seeing on a few examples that I'm going to talk about in a moment. So circling back to this no-code revolution that we keep going on about, I touched on it a little bit earlier and I gave you the definition, but now I want to dive into what it really is. And if we just look over at AI, for instance, so things like ChatGPT, everyone has gone crazy for it, but it feels like it only cropped up a few weeks ago out of nowhere. But ever since, everyone's gone crazy for it. We're all looking for the best prompts for ChatGPT to help us in whatever area of life. But what if I told you that AI has pretty much been a staple in all of our lives for years now? On the surface, you might think, Sam, what do you want about? But think of Alexa or Siri. That's AI, and you've probably been using that for years. Or another example, if you haven't, what about your emails? So have you ever typed out the start of a message and then it'll fill in the suggestion for the rest of that sentence? Well, that's AI again. It's so widespread, like Google do it, Microsoft do it. I think you'd be hard pressed to find an email provider at least that doesn't do that. And it's even in our LinkedIn messages. So you could literally have a conversation now with someone on LinkedIn where you don't even have to type. You could literally just go back and forth pressing buttons. And this is crazy. But it's also AI. And it's the same with no code. So it's now a fully fledged movement. And even though it's still in its relative infancy, it's been slowly bubbling up under our noses for years now. And we're in the age of web tool democratization. Webflow, Wix, Squarespace, they may on the surface be competing, but really they're all part of the same team, which is the movement to link web tools far more accessible for all. And the modern web has made it possible for anyone to create anything. And I think that should be cause for massive excitement. Think about Instagram. So I found some really old screenshots of Instagram, but this is to illustrate a point that Instagram was one of the OG no-code tools. So if you're anything like me, you probably use it every day. But if you stop and think, there was a time when things that we take for granted, so like adding filters and digitally altering an image. That was a designer's task. It was really specialist and it involved specialist equipment and software. But now millions of us, we do this and we use these features every single day. And that democratic DIY principle it's been driving digital development on a macro scale for years, and we didn't even notice. And I'll reiterate, this is good for everyone. So constant innovation is far more inclusive. It results in better products, both for us and for businesses. And it creates more jobs and opportunity, which is probably the opposite of what you may think from tools like this. We're all building the web in our own way, and it's not just websites. We need to stop thinking no code is just like a Squarespace or a Wix. It's everything. So every time you build or you put together your Google Slides or you make a PDF on Canva, and even if you do an Instagram story, it's creating parts of the internet. And what have all of these got in common? Well, they're no code. You don't have to sit there and write lines of code. It's a visual editor. And this is only the beginning. So there's always going to be huge demand for bespoke designs from professionals. What we're looking at here is Canva. So Canva, they've now had 15 billion designs on their platform. And as a platform, it's allowed normal people like us, people to make allow them to become extremely proficient, basically, at making their own assets. But it didn't put designers out of work. In fact, I think Canva has increased the respect for the craft that people have. And I think also demand for designers has never been higher. Similarly, no code isn't here to oust, development intensive builds. It's just another way that I think will resonate with a lot of us here today. And to illustrate the point, I've got this beautiful picture that I found of Gordon Ramsay. So let's imagine that you're rustling up a peanut butter sandwich at home. Is this going to stop people coming to Gordon's restaurants? Is he going to be out of a job because of your peanut butter sandwiches? Of course he isn't. There's always going to be demand for his services in particular and fine dining in general. But sometimes you're just hungry and you want to rustle up a peanut butter sandwich. Home cooking is a bit like no code. So the tools themselves have increasingly become more advanced, they've become more accessible, and they've actually become more easy to use for the masses. So you can create tasty, beautiful dishes in your own kitchen, just like you can create a sleek and a functional website from your home office. But it doesn't mean that everyone has suddenly stopped eating out at restaurants. The two, I believe, they can coexist harmoniously. But now, let's say you did want to make a Michelin star meal, then you've actually got all the tools at your disposal to at least try it yourself. So let's say you were to pay Gordon to come to your house. I don't know how much that would take, but if he made it, of course, it's probably going to be better. But what's stopping you from going it alone? You have access to the same equipment that he would. You can find the recipe online with a video walkthrough. You can go and buy the exact same ingredients, and it's exactly the same story for no code. Hopefully that anecdote makes sense. But if it doesn't, at least you got this picture of Gordon to laugh at. So what else has actually changed? In short, as you can see here, everything. So we'll start with something I think all of us are going to be thankful for, and that's a heavy de-emphasis on jargon. I find jargon to be quite alienating, to be honest. And I find it alienating, not just for me, but for people who don't live and breathe a specific topic. Because if I was to start talking to one of my clients about JavaScript queries and CSS frameworks, their eyes are just going to glaze over and they won't be invested in the project as much. And this is going to have a huge negative effect overall on the final product. Jargon, yeah, it can be useful and it still does exist to some degree, but with the advent of these, what you see is what you get: visual builders. The need for technical talk, it's been massively reduced. So instead of having to know 18 variants of Klingon and talking all these code-based riddles, instructions are just so much simpler. And this helps everybody because it's not just you as the client, but it helps the developer as well, because they don't have to spend so much time breaking down complex convoluted processes, because there just isn't any need to. And this saves both parties time. It stops frustrations when things get lost in translation, and it almost frees us up. So the focus now has gone away from what is technically possible, and instead we can zero in on strategy and design, because the technical capabilities are pretty much unbridled with no code. You don't have to second guess every single request that you make. And over time, this is going to compound due to how much more cumulative brain power that we can, or that organizations can attribute to macro thinking and direction, which is all a huge net positive for the sector in general. Then we've got accessibility. So this is a huge one, and it's come on leaps and bounds in just the past few years. And that goes for accessibility for you as a client. So being able to make your own website, but also for those visiting that website. The push for accessibility is widespread. It's in every single area, and it's an extremely positive move, and it's opened the web up to millions more people than before. Then down here, you will see the exploration of ideas. So the power now is in our hands. If you wanted to do it yourself, you genuinely could. Whilst it probably won't be as good as if you were to hire a developer, just think back to the Gordon Ramsay analogy, you could still do it. And the fact that this is possible should be a massive cause for celebration. And I've got in my notes here, like, can you imagine in 5 years' time where we're going to be with these platforms? I would hazard to guess that if you're not already on a no-code platform now, I think you probably will be within the next 5 years. The rate of innovation is that steep. I know that's quite a bold prediction. I hope that doesn't come back to bite me. But I just want to make a quick note on trends. So obviously, design paradigms have moved on massively in even just the past few years, because that is what they do. Trends by nature, they move in the blink of an eye. And as an example of this, we've got the network's storytelling for goods website. I personally audited this last week, and I found some things sticking out like a sore thumb. So one of which was the use of shadows behind their font. I said in the video review, I was like, this is screaming 2014. And I think that they knew that too. And you'll intuitively know styles and preferences are changing day by day in web design. But this feels a lot bigger than just trends coming and going. So no code has done something completely different. It's taken the core fundamentals of what web design is and it's shifted it on its axis. What we're seeing now is the mass lowering of the barrier to entry for web tools in general, which has made the internet as a whole increasingly more accessible. It's made it more affordable, and it's made it more efficient. If I could sum it up, I would say that the macro trend for all tools is that eventually they become easier to use and more widely available as time goes on. And that exact same thing is happening with web design and no-code builders in general right now. It's a natural progression. It was inevitable that it would happen. And now that it has, it's showing no signs of slowing down whatsoever. In fact, it's speeding up every single day. And the web itself has become a much more democratic place, and it's put the power firmly in users' hands. The walls have been pulled down, and now really we all get a chance to play. And that is why I'm a no-code evangelist. So why did I go down the route of no-code, and do I strictly stick to complete code abstinence? That was a mouthful, wasn't it? Well, the short answer is no. I don't avoid code. In fact, I use it in, I would say, 80% of my builds for clients. And that's because I use something called a hybrid approach, which you may have heard elsewhere called a low-code approach. This is something that I alluded to a little bit at the start, and now I just want to get clear on exactly what it is. So I build websites on Squarespace, which is a no-code platform. And when I started out, I stuck to that vehemently. It was just drag and drop builder. I'd use that exclusively. But I found that for the more advanced styling and functionality that some clients wanted, just small snippets of code were needed just to enhance things a little bit. And as I began to research and learn, it became clear that pairing of the best bits of no code, for example, the ease of use and efficient change making systems, blended with the flexibility of coding. So this allows us to create as close to the perfect finished product as possible. And what I call this the Goldilocks zone. So this is where two worlds collide almost. You have design freedom, you have bespoke functionality, ease of use, and shorter timeframes to get your website live, or if it's just changes, to spin those changes up and push them out. It's the best of both, and this approach, as I mentioned down here, has completely transformed the online presence of over 300 of my clients to date. And here are 3 of those clients. So the links for these should be in the chat now if you want to check them out. I think these 3 are perfect illustrations of the capabilities that we've been talking about so far. So on the left, we've got a website for British Olympic gold medalist Dame Kelly Holmes and her foundation. Then in the middle, we have a large-scale custom build for a multi-billion-dollar company in the US who build, I think, ventilation systems for some of the world's largest companies. I think the clients are like Apple, Meta, Google. It's a really strong niche to be in the ventilation system world, but they need a site as well. And then we have a Politics for Good software website for a non-profit, which is based here in the UK. Now, obviously, all 3 of these are completely different, and the needs were very different, and the designs themselves were drastically different. This, in my mind, showcases just how versatile no code is and how it can cater to pretty much any need you can throw at it. It's not pigeonholed into any specific niche. And the potential of websites like this is only really capped by your imagination, contrary to what most people think, whereby you're constrained by a template. That's just not the case anymore. But that said, it goes deeper than just design. You can get no-code web builders that completely streamline your organization's process if you want to. As an example, so Squarespace is my platform of choice. You can build your website, obviously, then you can register a domain, you can manage hosting, you can set up email marketing campaigns, you have an analytics dashboard, you have airtight security as standard, you get free SSL certificate, and the ability to SEO optimize basically every page, all via one dashboard. And I'm pretty sure that all of the other big no-code platforms do this as well. And these platforms are spearheading a revolution. It's basically a race to see who can offer the most complete package and gobble up as much market share from your more established sort of WordPress and open source ecosystems that have traditionally had the lion's share of the internet. Now, the result of this race is that there's an offer that's almost too good to be true. And I'm aware that this might sound it, because what I'm saying here is you have this one platform that can do everything. It's fast, it's limitless, it's beautiful, it's this, it's that. And I understand that, you know, it does sound like I'm exaggerating almost. But most of, if not all of these no-code platforms that I'm talking about have free trials. So you can literally go in and try it for yourself. Like I said, I've got no discount codes or affiliate links. So if you go and just check these out, then I'd love to hear about your experiences. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave my email at the very end. If you do go forward and you want to talk to me about your experience, then drop me a line and I'd love to hear about it. So that leads me onto costs. As I said right at the start, there is a time and a place for 6 and maybe even 7-figure builds. But the reality is that for the majority of sites, I don't think this is needed personally. Most of us here today are going to be foundations and non-profits. So presenting information is the name of the game. And you may need to host, let's say, some spreadsheets, maybe some data sets, have event registration capability and some of the basic functions. But when we strip it back, your website simply needs to be beautiful, it needs to be fast, it needs to function well, and it needs to basically present information to users who need to access certain information. It needs to be easy for them to get there. That's it. It doesn't necessarily need to be the one-stop shop for every single function. Obviously, no-code platforms can do a lot of that. I've just spoken about that. But I'd hazard a guess that you have different software anyway that takes care of the various cogs in your machine, and your website, I think, should be treated exactly the same. So it should be a part of the machine and not the machine itself. And with that in mind, here's a really brief cost comparison of a completely custom build versus a no-code / a low-code build. As you can see, the cost of a no-code / low-code build is anything up to around $25,000. But what you'll also notice is that it starts at $200, and that's not a typo, because you can do it yourself. Like I've mentioned, the only cost to you for this will be your time plus, let's say, a hosting fee and a domain fee. That's it. And what you'll also notice here is that I have said no code includes WordPress, and we'll come on to that in just a moment. But first, just a quick note on custom coded sites. These can cost upwards of $200,000, and that's if you want all the bells and whistles, obviously associated with a full development team and bespoke tech elements, whatever they may be. And obviously, I'm not silly. I know you can get this much cheaper. I know you can get both much cheaper, and you can get both much more expensive as well. But to me, just the stark contrast, that highlights the huge potential benefit that no code offers, and it presents why it's at least worth some consideration. And then, yes, so WordPress is no code. I said we'd come back round to it. So if we think back to WordPress's inception, it was originally just for bloggers who wanted to put out their blogs into the world, and it was more of just a platform and not a web builder. It grew and grew as people started to tinker with the open source materials until it grew into this behemoth that we have today that powers about, I think it's about 42% of the web. But if you want to do drag and drop building, you can absolutely do it on WordPress. It's got tons of plugins that you can use to do no code builds. Hopefully, this in itself makes you realize that no code isn't just for small scale sites like a lot of people may think. I'm guessing a lot of websites of the foundations and the nonprofits who are on this webinar right now have been built with WordPress, which I think validates no code's credentials, at least a little bit. And the only thing that WordPress, the only downside to WordPress, I would say, is that when you compare it to all-in-one platforms, it does have a lot more moving parts, and it can be prone to breaking. You need to update plugins quite often, and you may find yourself paying an IT person quite a hefty monthly fee just to make sure everything works and it doesn't start doing stuff that it's not meant to when it breaks. With other no-code builders, it's more of an all-in-one system, so this just isn't the case. I've personally never charged a retainer, like a monthly maintenance package to a client, because it's just not needed. If I was to do that, I would be robbing them blind. Basically, there are reams of software engineers who work for these platforms. They keep everything running, they keep the servers up, they keep the sites ticking over, and all updates, they're rolled out automatically. So you can sleep soundly at night knowing that your site, when you wake up in the morning, isn't going to have self-imploded. It's not $19.99 anymore, and you really don't need to be paying for these obscene web maintenance packages. Obviously, if you have this insane custom build that requires an entire team to keep on top of it, then yes, okay. But it doesn't have to be the case anymore. With these no-code builders, that does away with all of that. So what actually are your options? I've talked a lot about these various builders. Now let me just lay it out specifically for you. So what it actually comes to building your website in a way that makes the most of no code, your options are pretty much endless. And that's a great thing because diversity of competition breeds innovation, but it can also stop us in our tracks before we've even had a chance to get the benefits of no code. And that's because we get paralysis by analysis. We're just bombarded with this no code builder and that no code builder. And there's so many pushed into our face that we go, okay, no, I don't want anything to do with this. And we just stay exactly where we are. In fact, I was doing some research for this slide in particular to try and give you a number. And I just could not find anywhere that said there are X amount of no code builders, because the rate of adoption is so insane and there's a new platform seemingly popping up every hour. But what I can do is give you the best platforms to at least look into. By the way, these are in no particular order. So first off, we've talked about it, WordPress. Most of us are going to be familiar with this, and you can certainly use it as a no-code platform. That said, if you want to use it as a low-code or a super high-code, then you can do that as well. Same goes for Squarespace and Wix. So Squarespace is my chosen platform. You can inject tons of code in there if you want. Same with Wix. They both have a similar setup in the back end. Both are drag and drop builders, and they market themselves as an all-in-one solution for the DIYer and not so much a DFYer, even though it does, or both do suit both. Then we've got Webflow. So Webflow is a little bit different to these three. And basically, I find it to be slightly less accessible to beginners, because it's got a pretty steep learning curve. But if you can get a grasp of it, it's a really, really powerful builder. So it could be something to look into if you're pretty tech savvy. And towards the end of the webinar, I'm also going to give you a ton more no-code tools that are going to help you. It's not it's not just your websites. So it's going to help your organizations as a whole. And these softwares have helped me massively, but it's not just me going on one anecdote. They have provably helped millions of other people as well. So it's definitely worth sticking around for that. And to use these tools, you no longer have to have years of specialist knowledge and training, which brings me on to this. So believe it or not, this is not a picture of me making a Squarespace website, but I really like this, so I wanted to put it in to illustrate the point. So even just 5 years ago, people were petrified of making their own website. No, I was. So I would go into a YouTube tutorial and I'd be lost within 5 minutes. I remember it must have been about 6 years ago, maybe 7. And I was trying to build my own blog for the first time. And there was so much jargon in these like walkthrough tutorials, both on YouTube and like articles, that I just gave up, and I didn't come back for another year. And even follow along tutorials, they're just not feasible to replicate if you don't have a robust or slightly robust grasp of code and the platforms that these people are talking about. For organizations, this is completely different. So it's not even a question, but it wasn't even a question. You either had to buy an off-the-shelf template and then just put your images in, put your text in, and change maybe the colors and the fonts, or you pay a developer and say, okay, go away and just hope for the best. And it's fine to pay a developer. I am literally a developer. I wouldn't have any sort of career if no one paid developers. So that's not what I'm saying. But being able to grasp the process a lot more, I think it gives you the confidence to have more valuable input into your website and the overall final design. And that is something I think we can all agree is a huge positive. I also think that you get more satisfaction right at the end because you know that you've been an integral part of actually shaping that website. Nowadays, anyone with an internet connection can access the no-code platforms that we've mentioned. But not only that, they can actually use them. So being able to having a platform that's accessible to the public, that's one thing. But being usable for the masses is a completely different ball game. So tools like Squarespace, Canva, Google's G Suite, which I think might be called Workspace now. They allow us to build an online presence. They then allow us to develop assets, and then they allow us to host countless different types of data in a way that anyone can access and also make sense of. So the power, like this wizard, is it's in your hands for the first time ever. Websites, they're now for everybody, and the democratization of web tools is fully in motion. And I think a perfect example of this is the ability to build your own mock-up. So instead of going to a developer and essentially asking them to dive into your brain and come out and find exactly what you want, you can show them. So no-code platforms, they allow you to quickly act on ideas and actually visually build out your goals and your visions for your own site. We actually did this with the network site. So the team come to me, they had the foundations laid, and they said, Sam, we've got X. We need you to turn it into Y. Here's our input. And that made my job 10 times easier because I wasn't just guessing. I wasn't taking a stab in the dark. And, by no means are the team design experts, but because their chosen platform was a no-code builder like Squarespace, we were able to develop at speed, and we pretty much hit a bullseye straight out of the gate, which is a perfect segue into our mini case study. So this is, yes, the network site, but it's a mini case study on the power of no code. And as a lot of you will have seen over the past few months, the network have had a brand new site built by yours truly. So myself and Kareem, we worked on this for the best part of 5 months to get the website up and running, despite maybe some initial concerns from others that Squarespace and drag and drop builders in particular just couldn't host such an important and large website. That's something I'm going to come on to in a minute, but the general consensus now is that it absolutely can be done, and we have the live and breathe and proof right here. So why did we opt to go the no-code route? Well, as we've discussed, no-code offers excellent infrastructure to organizations who need, let's say, several people being able to access the site at once. It's intuitive to use, it's easy to learn, and it allows for multiple people working on different things at the same time without the need for constant hand-holding or, super long training sessions. That's just not needed. This empowers everybody to do the job as best as possible. And the end result, I don't want to toot my own horn too much, but I think it was phenomenal. The site is comfortably now dealing with large amounts of daily traffic with zero downtime. It houses all of the networks, team member profiles. We've got speakers on there, all the events. You've probably seen it. We've got past and present, and it's filterable. We've got blogs, we've got resources, and it looks great while doing all of that. At least I think it looks great. Like I say, I don't want to toot my own horn too much, but a quick note: the link to the website is actually in the chat now. So if you want to check that out while I speak, feel free to do so. We won't be changing slides for a minute. So, personally, I couldn't be happier with it because what I see this as is the poster child for what no code can do. Everyone on this webinar can go and check the site out, and you can see the potential of no code. And I know that the team are happy too because we're working on 4 additional sites together. So that's going to be really fun. Now, let's just circle back to a couple of concerns that the team and I faced when we started. So the main one was that you simply don't have the creative freedom of platforms like a Drupal or a Ruby on Rails. That really isn't the case anymore. So if we just rewind to the 3 examples that I showed earlier, no code platforms just aren't beholden to templates, and we can achieve virtually anything stylistically that you can dream up. Another one that we had was that Squarespace and no code in general just couldn't house the sheer volume of content that the team had. And again, we were able to deal with this with ease, to be honest. So Squarespace, which was our chosen platform, is able to hold almost limitless amounts of pages and data without so much as a millisecond drop in responsiveness, both on the front and the back end. So for us and users. And it's also really easy to keep on top of. It's easy to put things in folders, and it's easier to navigate and search for things. It's even easier as we grow and grow. We can expand all this content, and it gets no more difficult to navigate through. So as we built, I think these concerns generally faded away as people started to realize, there's genuine power in no code. And I think by the end, we did have quite a few converted fans. So now I want to show you these resources. We've been through all of that. Maybe you're now curious. Here are some of the resources. I've put a full list together, as I've mentioned a couple of times, over here at bycrawford.com/comnet. The link to that will be in the chat now. And I think it's really going to help a lot of your organizations. So even if you don't go with the web builders, the supporting tools may well be a game changer. And, if you get nothing else from this webinar, one of these may be of huge, huge help. So if you want the main overview, though, I'm going to give it to you now. First off, our web builders, we've got Squarespace and Wix, which are sort of the front runners when it comes to DIY no-code builders. These have excellent content management systems, and they offer tons of design freedom right out of the box. Then we've got Webflow, which I've discussed before, is probably geared slightly more to the tech-savvy users, but it's extremely powerful if you can get to grips with it. Then we've got something called Framer. So I view Framer a little bit like the TikTok of web builders. It's super quick, it's super intuitive, and it allows us to get a site up in next to no time. It doesn't quite have all the features of the other web builders on this list, but if you need something really aesthetically pleasing and quick, then this could be a great option. Finally, we've got Divi, Elementor, etc. These are WordPress plugins. So if you want to do drag and drop on WordPress, these are your places to go. And if you want some supporting no-code software to create your own content and start building out your foundation or your nonprofit's online presence even further and reaching more people, here are some really handy tools. A lot of us will already know about Canva. It allows you to create your own assets, to put together slides. I put these slides for the webinar together on this. It allows you to create logos. If you need to remove busy backgrounds from photos, edit those photos. There's so much you can do with Canva. Then we've got G Suite, which I did look this up today. I think it's called Google Workspace now. But you've got, think of Gmail. Then you've got slides. Then you've got documents. You can collaborate on everything. You can schedule meetings. You can look at people's calendars. You can schedule conferences. You can collect form entries. The list goes on. I personally think G Suite / Google Workspace is one of the most powerful no-code tools that there is. Then we've got something a little bit left field. So this is Descript, and this is for those of us who create video content. And basically what Descript does is it takes the audio from your videos and it creates these transcripts within seconds. Now, like Sean said, I sound a bit like a Beatle. I've got a funny accent. So sometimes, it may not be perfect, but it's about 90 to 95% perfect. So if you have a lot of video content and you put closed captions on, this is an absolute game changer. But not only that, if you have someone editing your videos, you can cut this editing time down by, I would say, 80%, because what it does is gaps between words, you can shorten them in the click of a button. There's no need to be uber skilled. I do this and I'm not a video editor. It also gets rid of ums and ums and filler words, which I'm very guilty of. So that is brilliant. It makes everything look so much slicker. It also allows you to have studio sound. So let's say you're recording videos on the fly and you're out and about. With a click of a button, you can get studio sound, which is amazing audio without the need for studio equipment. So that's my pitch on Descript. Again, there's no affiliate links. I just think it's a fantastic no-code tool. Then we've got Unfold. So Unfold allows you to create social media assets, which are on brand, they're uniform, and it allows you to just make sure the content across all your social media profiles just looks fantastic. Then we've got YouTube. So YouTube is great for hosting videos, and you don't even have to make these public. They can be unlisted. So as an example, on the network's website, we wanted a video library. So instead of uploading tons and tons of MP4s to like directly to the site, we can pull through all of these videos from YouTube. It looks amazing for users who are actually using the site, and it's much faster. And again, it's a no-code tool, because what YouTube is doing is it's taking an MP4 and it's giving it a description and it's publishing it onto the web. So that's why I put yes, really. In fact, and the beauty of all of these is that they offer a freemium model, whereby you get about 80% of the features completely for free. So you get to get a feel for software in its pretty much in its entirety before you make any sort of decision. And you may actually find that the freemium model is all that you need. So for instance, the free version of G Suite, I keep calling it G Suite, Google Workspace, is so good that I still haven't upgraded, and it's been about 4 years. So those are the resources. Now, if you want more, I think there's about 22 in all. If you go to bycrawford.com/comnet, it's all there. Now, I just want to recap everything that we've been through. So we took an overview of the landscape as it stands and what that means for you. After this, we went through the rise of no code and what I call the no code era. Then we did some cost comparisons and discussed why you no longer have to be a wizard to understand web design. I then took us through a mini case study of the network's website. And then finally, I've just taken you through a starter kit for your no code journey, if you choose to go on it. And if you do want the full list, like I say, just head to the resources page. So that is me all talked out. Thank you, everybody, once again, if you made it this far. And if you want to get in touch with me in any way, shape or form, you can always hit me up at sam@bycrawford.com.